following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the September 24th meeting of the Cary Town Council. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight from your home as we continue to follow the governor's state of emergency orders. We are streaming tonight's meeting virtually. The majority of the council is present with me here tonight. We all had our temperature checks before entering the chambers, and as you can see, we have adjusted our seating arrangement to maintain proper social distancing. Each person has been given hand sanitizer as well as a mask to use as they deem appropriate. To meet the requirement of a remote meetings law, we have one council member participating remotely through WebEx. Council member Ya Lu, thank you for joining us remotely. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Very good. We can hear you too. Okay, we'll start our meeting by recognizing Councilmember Smith, who will lead our ceremonial opening. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. This past week, a Cary legend and very special person, Guy Mendenhall, passed away. And Guy truly embraced the Cary community spirit through his dedication to Cary High athletics and to our community. He was truly an all-around great Cary guy who represented us well. He graduated from Cary High School and then East Carolina College. He was a recipient of many awards over the years, including being the charter member of Cary High School Hall of Fame, the North Carolina High School Athletic Directors Hall of Fame, and the Town of Cary's Hometown Spirit Award. Upon his retirement, the teachers at Cary High established a Guy Mendenhall Spirit Award to be given annually to a senior student and a staff member who exemplified Guy's love and involvement for not only Cary High School, but for Cary. He will be missed and remembered by all. I now ask you to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is to adopt the agenda. There has been a request from the applicants to remove the following items from the agenda. 19 REZ 29 Lily Atkins rezoning. 19 REZ 33 3012 Holly Springs Road rezoning. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call vote starting with Ms. Liu.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Yarha.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
And I vote affirmative as well. Motion is unanimous. We now move to recognitions, reports, and presentations, and we will receive a financial update from our Chief Financial Officer, Karen Mills.
Good evening, Council. As we promised during the budget, we're providing you with a monthly financial update during this pandemic economy, and I do have good news tonight. Recall that we counted FY 2020 pandemic expenditures of approximately $4.3 million. In addition to the county grants, CARES funding of almost $900,000, we've received notice that we're getting $1.6 million of CARES funding from the FTA to help fund our transit expenditures. On top of this, there's a potential for another $500,000 in reimbursement from FEMA for PPE that we're working towards. So in regards to sales tax, I'm glad that I don't make bets because I would have lost money on the June sales tax number. Quite frankly, they surprised us. June sales tax was 7% more than June of 2019. Without the pandemic, if we had stayed on the 9% growth track, we would have made $2.1 million more in sales tax revenue, but we're not complaining about coming in $1 million or 3% over budget at year end. We don't know whether this was some pent up demand when the stay-at-home orders were relaxed or a sign of the economy, but regardless, we think it bodes well for 2021. In summary, our first financial estimate of $10.5 million hit from the pandemic in FY 2020, our current estimates of over $7 million is good news. When we shift to the utility, during the pandemic, about 3,000 accounts were delinquent. When the governor's stay on disconnections was lifted in July, almost a third of those customers caught up their account on their own initiative. By the time that we sent out payment plan letters earlier this month, there were only 2,058 accounts that are past due. We continue to plan to extend grace through December and communicate with those citizens who are still struggling. If we don't hear from anyone about a utility account by January or receive a payment by then we will look at service disconnection again after December with plenty of time to communicate. Of the 2,058 payment plan letters that did go out, 95% of the accounts were residential for about 84% of the total delinquent amount. Only 100 accounts, about 5% of our total accounts, represent Cary's small businesses with about 10% of the total delinquent amount. We recently learned about another resource that might be able to help our small businesses with their bills. We'll be working to connect them with information on that program. Looking ahead into my crystal ball for FY 2021, as I mentioned, we have a more positive outlook for sales tax based on those June receipts. Permits and fees are on track with our reduced budget. Utility billing is on track. We've experienced small increases in a large number of residential accounts, which is making up for larger decreases in demand in a small number of commercial accounts. Our occupancy tax is about an $800,000 annual revenue, and I am a little concerned about making that budget, but I'm confident that we'll be able to keep our budget balanced. Parks and Rec revenues will continue to experience delays, and we think that sales tax receipts could cover some of these under budget items. So all in all, a traditional Cary picture, our prudent approach is paying off and keeping us on track on whole. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. Our next update will be on October 22nd.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. Questions for Ms. Mills? Thank you. Great report. Shocking, actually,
It is.
with the sales tax.
Is that on our website so that citizens could see that information?
It will be, yeah.
Okay.
Very good. We now move to our next agenda item, Public Speaks Out. Instructions for participating at Public Speaks Out were attached to the posted agenda. Participants had the opportunity to send their comments through email, the 311 online portal, and regular mail. All comments received before noon today were emailed to the council, and a printed copy was given to council at tonight's meeting. At this time, I'll open Public Speaks Out, and I'll call on staff to summarize comments received.
Yes, so we received one comment from Mary Collins in opposition to 19 REZ 16, and then we received 18 comments that were tied to the two public hearings that were removed from the agenda tonight 19 REZ 29, and 19 REZ 33. They were all in opposition, and I'll just read the names of the people that submitted it. Hornsby, Carol L. Pavon, Schmidt, Carol L. Ryder, Schmidt, Bondi, Schmidt, Nicolata, Lumley, Kellen Hammer, Blackwell, McGee, Barslow, Graff, Wallow, and Kaser.
Thank you. We have 2 on the line to speak, and each speaker has 3 minutes for their comments, and I'll be watching the timer in the council chambers, and we'll let speakers know when they have reached their 3 minutes. We want to adhere to the 3 minutes to be fair to all of our speakers. I'll call on the town clerk at this time to recognize our first speaker.
Yes, our first speaker is Neil Gosh. If you could confirm that you're the correct person by stating your name and address.
Neil Ghosh, 421 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gosh. Please proceed.
And good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Neil Ghosh. I am an attorney with the Morningstar Law Group at 421 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. Even though it is on your consent agenda, I wanted to speak a little bit about the Cary Point rezoning case to highlight the success of this public hearing process. You might recall that at the initial hearing, some area residents raised concerns about the lighting in the project and the visual screening along Morrisville Parkway. We have worked with staff and the neighbors to address those concerns, and my understanding is that we have done so. To address the concern about lighting, we have added a condition that full cutoff LED fixtures with lighting shields will be required for the initial construction of the community. On the screening issue, we had to go back to the drawing board a little bit to figure out what could be done. We have added a requirement that a continuous row of shrubs, 3 feet at time of planting and at least 5 feet at maturity, must be provided between the Morrisville Parkway right-of-way and our parking field. Additionally, we have revised our grading plans to allow for the preservation of many more existing trees than we originally contemplated. Along Morrisville Parkway, the current version of the site plan retains about 144 trees, which are 6 inches in caliper or greater. That is a pretty significant buffer, but we will be adding vegetation in areas where the existing tree coverage does not meet the opacity standard. As I explained at the initial public hearing, the proposed rezoning will achieve a community that is in the same spirit as what originally was approved. We are changing the age restrictions slightly to match a different federal program, and despite the additional 20 units the zoning would add, the actual traffic impacts are calculated to decrease, probably because the age restriction serves a slightly less mobile population than previously was contemplated. Regardless, we have retained all of the previously committed traffic improvements. With these changes, the Planning and Zoning Board unanimously recommended approval for this project. More importantly, my understanding is that we have addressed the neighbors' concern. In sum, approving this rezoning will provide for a better project than when you all previously approved, because it is essentially the same project, but with more buffers and better lighting. So kudos to you all. The public hearing process has really worked for the better on this case, and I wanted to be sure to celebrate that with you. We hope to have your support tonight, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh.
Our second speaker is Jamie Swelda. If you'll confirm that you're the correct person by giving your name and address.
That's Jamie Schwadler at 301 Fayetteville Street.
Thank you.
Please proceed, Ms. Schwadler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I wanted to give a brief update on 19 REZ 16, the Silverton PDV amendment, and what we have done to address the concerns raised about our previous energy commitments. I would not be back before you tonight without significant work over the last 2 weeks to evaluate what more we could do and what was possible. You should be proud of your planning and legal staff who worked quickly to evaluate the potential solutions we raised and helped refine the conditions before you tonight. Their hard work is very much appreciated. At the last meeting, we heard the council's desire to see increased commitments on solar energy and possibly solar panels. We're also aware of the struggle in making those commitments a reality when there are no existing projects with solar commitments in Cary. There's also uncertainty about what would be feasible because the town has not studied this and would have to engage a consultant knowledgeable in solar to understand the options. To address those concerns, we are committing to hire such a consultant to study the feasibility of installing solar and will provide a copy of the study to the town. If the cost of design and installation of the solar facility does not exceed $10,000, we will also install it. This commitment not only reflects our intent to continue working with the town towards solar, it provides the town a valuable resource and data points that it does not have today. We are also committing to not just 2, but all 4 of the energy efficiency measures in the PDP, which I highlighted at the last meeting, which will result in the installation of 2 electric car charging stations, on-site composting and recycling programs, and the use of LED lights. These are in addition to the solar wiring and conduit to accommodate the solar panels, which were the first physical step into making solar a reality. The Planning and Zoning Board unanimously approved this case, and staff recommends approval tonight. As a company rooted in Cary, Sing is excited that these new commitments will make strides towards exploring solar options, reducing waste, and lowering emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on the
No
line?
other speakers.
We have no other speakers, so I'll close public speaks out, and we'll move to the consent agenda. Please understand that for the benefit of people watching our meeting, these consent agenda items take 1 vote to approve. I'll take a moment to review the consent agenda items. We have bid award for the Carpenter Water Tank Rehabilitation, 19 REZ 27 Cary Point PDD Amendment, 19 REZ 28 Wake Med Medical Office Park Amendment, fiscal year 2020 utility reimbursement agreements and annual reimbursements, bank official depositories resolution, bid award for the Cary Apex Water Treatment Facility Ozone, financial policy update, 20A06 Lennar Carolinas LLC annexation, adjustment to adopted meeting schedule, town council recommend advisory volunteer appointments. Ms. Robinson contacted me before the meeting and said she would like to comment on item 19 REZ 27, but is not interested in pulling, and that is the Cary Point PDD amendment. I'll open it up to council members to see if they want to pull any of the items listed on consent for discussion. If not, I'll turn it over to Ms. Robinson. Ms.
Thank you
Robinson.
so much. Yeah, I'm not interested in pulling Cary Point PDD because I'm not going to vote against it, but I did want to comment that the review of this project does reveal to me that we have some improvement in our process of hearing citizens' concerns, sending those concerns to our P&Z board, and then coming back for a vote to the council. Historically, our process would allow for the Planning and Zoning Board to investigate each of those concerns that are raised by citizens. But with our new system where the Planning and Zoning Board looks to basically test each project to see if it is consistent with our community plan, some of those citizen concerns may not be examined to the extent they were before. So I wanted to pull this because I had a small handful of citizens that reached out in opposition to some of the changes. I think our staff did a very good job in answering those issues, and I do think that the project is better, but I know that the citizens are concerned about it. One thing I would like to just say to the council is I think that it would be good for us to direct our staff to look at a way that we can somehow make sure that our citizens don't feel like the concerns that they express are falling on deaf ears. And I would lean to our staff to come back with the approach for us. What would that look like in our process or in our documentation that would make sure that citizens feel like they're heard?
Very good. Okay, now's time for a motion for the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right. Roll call vote on the consent agenda. Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Yerha.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote affirmative, and it's a unanimous vote. We now move to public hearings. Same rules apply to public hearings that apply for public speaks out with one exception. Speakers now have 5 minutes. As for all of our public hearings, the instructions for submitting comments for tonight's meeting were included in the public hearing notices. Participants had an opportunity to send comments through email, 311 online portal, and regular mail. All comments received before noon today were emailed out to the council, and a printed copy was given to council at tonight's meeting. Our first two items were pulled at the beginning, removed at the beginning of the meeting, so we'll skip to our third rezoning, which is 19 REZ 30, Jones Franklin Residential. Planner Aaron Puckett will introduce the item. Council will not take action on this rezoning item tonight, but it will be referred to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation and returned to us at a future meeting. Ms. Puckett.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request to rezone approximately 9 acres located at the intersection of Jones Franklin Road and Macedonia Road. As we get started with this presentation, staff would like to note that the request before you this evening was submitted several months ago and has gone through 5 rounds of comment review with the Development Review Committee. The applicant has made a number of changes in response to these comments. We still do have several concerns, which we will summarize in our preliminary analysis. As always, at this stage of the process, staff and the applicants are open to observations or feedback you have, as this case may continue to evolve as it continues to move through the process. The site is an assemblage of 4 parcels located at the western corner of the intersection of Jones Franklin Road and Macedonia Road, and also has frontage on Walnut Street. There is an existing pond present on the site, located within the stream buffer shown here. The developer intends to drain the pond, and field determination of the buffer would then be required at the time of development plan review. There is a future street side trail segment shown along the property's frontage on Walnut Street. The trail is already constructed north of this site and was recently also constructed to the south with the development of the Bojangles at the corner of Walnut Street and Tryon Road. The site has frontage on 3 roads: Walnut Street, which is a 6-lane median divided thoroughfare, which is built out except for the segment of street side trail along this property, which the project would provide. Jones Franklin Road is an existing 3-lane thoroughfare with a future cross-section of 5 lanes with sidewalk on both sides. And Macedonia Road is a collector avenue with 2 lanes, and the future cross-section also requires sidewalk on both sides. The site is currently split zoned, with the majority of the site zoned residential 40 and the southeastern portion of the assemblage zoned general commercial. The site is also in the mixed-use overlay district. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property to mixed-use district with an associated preliminary development plan, or PDP, which is shown here. So the preliminary development plan proposes a maximum of 275 multifamily dwelling units distributed across 3 buildings with a maximum height of 60 feet, a minimum of 11,500 square feet of community gathering area distributed across 3 locations on the site, architectural corners on 3 building corners denoting entrances into the project to be a minimum of 75% masonry. The corner area will include at least the 20 feet extending along both facades from each of these corners. The applicant has also requested several modifications from the LDO. A parking reduction to a range of 1.4 to 1.6 spaces per unit. At the minimum rate of 1.4, this would represent a reduction of at least 38% from LDO rates. The removal of 1 champion tree, the approximate location shown here, and a reduction of 20 feet to the LDO required 50-foot wide residential streetscape along Walnut Street and Jones Franklin Road for a total width of 30 feet. The Macedonia Road streetscape is proposed at the standard LDO width of 30 feet for a collector. Averaging is also requested for all 3 streetscapes with a minimum width of 20 feet. A preliminary analysis against the policies of the Imagine Cary Community Plan finds that policies in the Live, Work, and Shape chapters apply most directly. The site is designated as part of a destination center on the Future Growth Framework map. These areas encourage the most intense development, so a dense multifamily project could be appropriate in these areas. Destination centers also specify that they should have an active pedestrian realm, outdoor gathering spaces, and a large share of parking in structures. The proposal does offer a substantial amount of community gathering space, which may help support this goal. However, with no structured parking offered, the large amount of surface parking in this development, which also somewhat limits the ability to offer a vibrant pedestrian environment, is at odds with some destination center recommendations. In regards to LIVE policies, the request could contribute to housing variety in general by providing multifamily residential units, particularly in a destination center where this housing type is encouraged. At the same time, there is a prevalence of multifamily housing in the surrounding area, making up about 60% of dwelling units within a mile radius of the site. The assemblage could also be considered an infill site, which could also be an appropriate location for residential uses. The location of multifamily housing, particularly in an area with employment opportunities such as the Crossroads Destination Center, may help to grow and sustain Cary's workforce. The use and density proposed are also encouraged in strategic locations, which again includes destination centers, and the use itself provides a reasonable transition between adjacent non-residential uses. However, the requested streetscape reductions weaken the natural buffer transitions. A traffic study evaluated 12 intersections within 1/2 mile of the site boundary per LDO requirements. As a result of the projected traffic generated by this project, a number of recommended traffic improvements were identified. The applicant has committed to improvements at the 2 site entrances on Macedonia Road and Jones Franklin Road. A neighborhood meeting was held in February. 2 nearby property owners attended and had some questions regarding the height of the buildings, as well as the buffers, particularly along the northwestern boundary, and expressed interest in having a fence as part of that buffer, which has since been offered. Staff received 2 emails seeking additional information about the case and 1 expressing concerns with filling in the on-site pond. Staff mailed public hearing notification to property owners within 800 feet of the subject site, which of course exceeds both the state and Cary's LDO requirements. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative is on the line tonight, and following their comments and the public hearing, we are available to answer any questions.
Very good. And do we have the applicant's name?
The applicant.
Sorry, it's Amanda Bambrick, Morningstar Law.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, members of council, for the opportunity to be with you this evening. My name is Amanda Bambrick with the Morningstar Law Group, here on behalf of Rangewater, a multifamily real estate company based out of Atlanta. I also have Tucker McKenzie with Withers Ravenel and Palmer MacArthur with Rangewater to help answer questions this evening. As Erin laid out in her staff report, this site is a triangular-shaped assemblage containing approximately 9.19 acres, bounded by Macedonia Road and Jones Franklin Road to the east and Walnut Street to the west. Of the total acreage, a large, unbuffered, man-made, non-jurisdictional pond covers approximately 4 of those acres. And of note, we obtained the determination back in February of 18. As Erin also noted, we are respectfully requesting to be rezoned to a mixed-use district to accommodate a multifamily apartment project encompassing a relatively even breakdown of 275 1- and 2-bedroom units. I do want to talk a little bit about the timeline here because I think it's important. I became aware of this site back in November of 2018. Over the course of the next few months, Rangewater worked to get the property under contract and to develop an initial site layout to provide to the town. While we had planned to have our first DRC meeting in April of 2019, we learned that due to the extent of the pond and instability of the soils, that additional geotechnical work was required. The project relaunched in July of 2019, and our first DRC meeting was on August 21st, 2019. We submitted our application in October, and the traffic study was complete in December of 2019. We attended the town's neighbor meeting on February 5th, 2020, which now feels like it was 200 years ago, with 2 neighbors in attendance. We would note that none were in opposition. The 2 comments we received today are the first we have received and are from individuals that are beyond the notice radius. But what I want to emphasize here is our commitment to the process and taking into account as much staff feedback as possible. I had actually initially typed out our entire timeline over the past year, which, officially made my presentation too long for tonight's 10 minutes. So the short story is that between August 21st of 2019 and September 12th of this year, we attended 5 DRC meetings, 1 virtual due to the pandemic. and generated at least 20 internal versions of the PDP over the course of 5 rounds of written comments. Given the extent of the communications between Rangewater's team and staff, the PDP before you today is the 5th official iteration, which was submitted finally on September 12th. So how did we get to the slide that you're looking at today? As you can see, this plan has been carefully crafted over a period of a year and a couple of months, with the resulting conditions provided and modifications requested closely resembling similarly situated rezonings that have been approved by this council. In fact, the conditions we have already provided over the course of taking feedback from staff very closely resemble conditions others have provided only after appearing before council at an initial public hearing. At the end of the day, we have tried hard to do our homework and absorb as much feedback as possible prior to coming to you this evening. That said, as with most projects I've worked with over the years, compromise is a routine part of the planning process. And with that, I'm going to take a little bit of time to discuss what we have been doing all this time in connection with the contents of the staff report. So parking, I'm going to start with parking. We have requested a reduction in the overall parking ratio, as Aaron mentioned. This is consistent with both the actual needs of projects of this type and actual parking needs data that the town currently possesses. Additionally, while the staff report does make reference to a quote unquote site dominated by surface parking lots, adherence to the LDO requirements would essentially expand such lots, which we would further note are almost fully screened by building area from the public rights of way. And again, I will tackle what you heard and what has been fully forthcoming, a subject of conversation with staff over the course of this process. We understand that staff would prefer structured parking, as they have on other sites similarly situated, although we would note that we are not aware of any structured parking at all really in this vicinity, that neither the economics nor geotechnical aspects of this project can accommodate it. Notwithstanding the cost and the reduction in redevelopment opportunities parking decks create, this project took a significant pause for 3 months, as I mentioned at its outset, so that the developer could wrangle the pond area and the soils and other geotechnical conditions. Assuming any project could absorb the cost of structured parking here, to ensure the deck would not sink into the extremely soft soils present beneath the pond, extraordinary foundation support would be required, further preventing such a project from being viable. With respect to streetscape, it is true we are also requesting modifications with respect to streetscape. What we have requested, as you can see, is an average streetscape which provides for 30 feet along the frontages with a 20-foot minimum. At first blush, this seems like a loss, but the reality is that this is a compromise. If you explore the staff report further, what you will see is this permits us to expand the green space on site as much as possible, providing a greenway connector trail, as well as 3 community gathering spaces that provide, per the staff report, more than 9 times the LDO requirement, while also maintaining the high quality of amenities provided and heightened architectural elements. We do not think this is negatively impactful to our adjacent uses, which Aaron mentioned earlier. You get the church and the restaurant parcel. Bank, they have not objected. We would also note that our inclusion of perimeter buffers are actual increases to the LDO standards. I do think a few honorable mentions are necessary too. This site plan has been driven in large part by discussions between staff and Rangewater that had gone on for a long time with respect to the location of the buildings and the connectivity requests between Macedonia Road and Jones Franklin. Over the course of the timeline here, this connectivity and the resulting internal circulation has changed multiple times. What you're looking at, as much of this site plan, is the result of a compromise between the town's goal for connectivity on what is a bit of an odd corner situation, along with the developer's goal of making safe pedestrian circulation within an apartment community and the desire to reduce non-resident cut-through traffic. This compromise drove other considerations as well with respect to the ultimate location of the buildings and the loss of 1 out of 4 total designated champion trees, as well as a reduction in units from the 300 we initially proposed to the 275 you see today. That said, so that you're aware, we know that this is an ongoing process. Our team has been talking about the champion tree just this afternoon in connection with some grading plans and continues to assess the situation. In conclusion, I'm going to tackle the other issue that we know is in the room, which is essentially the character of this area and the need for multifamily, generally speaking. The staff report notes that, quote, the breakdown of housing in the area, multifamily makes up about 65% of the existing or under construction housing units in a half mile of the site. I would note that generally speaking, if an area is appropriate for multifamily, then it's not a surprise really that there are in fact multifamily developments in that area. There are also significant transit and commercial resources in the immediate vicinity, which are complementary to multifamily uses and can even operate to reduce traffic. On balance, as I know y'all know, this destination center as a whole is overwhelmingly commercial. And I would also note that at the outset of this project, staff was interested in more density on this property because of its location in the destination center. All of that said, really, though, if you look within this same half-mile radius, which we did, actual apartment uses only touch about 13% of the actual land area, with the remainder being about an even split between other residential, single-family, and townhomes, as well as commercial uses. With the extent of the job and population growth coming to Cary, which will certainly increase again, both during and post-pandemic, particularly as urban populations seek to leave the cities and folks continue to work in large numbers from home, the policies of housing variety and affordable housing variety should be committed to providing housing variety available to the entire town, which is aspirational to your own policy guidance, and which could also bolster retail in the area. In conclusion, at the end of the day, this project does provide housing variety at this location. It represents a series of compromises that have taken place over a year. It acknowledges the reality of population and job growth in Wake County and will elevate the town's tax base by utilizing what could at some point in the future become a jurisdictional pond, which would certainly almost eliminate this property's use for much of anything when you take those buffers into account. We believe we can bring a quality project to the town that will certainly enhance this corridor and elevate the mix of uses existing in the area. We very much appreciate your consideration and look forward to working with everybody moving forward, and the whole team is here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Puckett. Let's see, we have no speakers on the line?
Correct, no speakers.
No speakers on the line, so I'll close the public hearing at this time.
Staff does have 2 comments to summarize.
Oh, please.
And I'll call on Erin to summarize those comments.
Thank you. So we did receive 2 comments via email for tonight's hearing. Comments in opposition to the request were submitted by both Mayor Collins and Nick Orso, who both expressed concerns with draining the pond that is located on the site, as well as concerns with the requested streetscape reductions. Mayor, that concludes the submitted comments for this hearing.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to my colleagues for their comments, if they have any at all, I'll make mine. I'm very familiar with this site. I'm sure Ms. Smith is too. I've driven by it every day for 30 years. Any direction you go from this site, down Jones Franklin, Tryon Road, down Walnut you see retail, down Holly Springs Road, down Piney Plains Road, down Dillard, it's all apartments. And 60%, I was surprised, I thought it'd be more than that. I'm looking for a compelling reason. The reason I bring that up, I want the applicant to convince me. What I heard was, and it's really only like 13%. I don't buy that. So I'm looking for a convincing reason to consider this. Also, a reduction in streetscape, you lost me there. I think it's too much in one place, and that's why you have to do reduction in streetscape. The view from Walnut Street is a sea of parking. That's ugly. I don't want to see that. The view from the side street was blocked. I think that ought to be turned around if you're going to do anything. And of course, I have issues with draining a pond. I think that's just a bad idea. So those are my comments. Those are my current concerns, and I'd say that to give an applicant an idea of where I'm at and what I'm thinking of. I never say no in the beginning. I'm always open, and I'll always listen to ideas and thoughts, but that's a lot to overcome for me. So I'm looking for the applicant to help me with that in the future. And I'll turn it over to Ms. France. You want to go next, or anybody?
I would share most of your concerns. I mean, the pond thing to me isn't that big a deal, but this is, when we consider a rezoning, like you said, we're looking for a compelling case. You know, something remarkable, something that meets Cary standards, something that meets our community's vision. This is a C average apartment project. You know, they met our minimum with masonry standards. They do some cutesy little artsy things on the corners of the buildings, but that's it. It's a sea of parking. There was no effort, at least in my opinion, to do some form of structured parking. I don't have a problem with the use. I really don't. Yeah, there's a lot of apartments around here. This could be a good apartment development, but they really came up short. I mean, I'm looking for something remarkable and something different, something unique, something that we'd all be proud of driving by, and I'm not seeing it here. I mean, I'm, of the opinion, 275 units, okay. I'm fine giving up more units if they could do something remarkable with materials and parking and stormwater and buffers and things that are important to us. So they use the word carefully crafted and quality project. I just don't see it. So if I feel this way,
That's the point.
this one's kind of DOA. So
Mr. Urha, would you like to go next?
Sure. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned is that there are 2 houses on the property that are on our historic inventory. And usually when that happens, I have a great concern. I am concerned. But to show you how I feel about the project in general, that concern is way down on the list.
Wow.
Wow.
The streetscape reduction is significant to me. And not only that, the building height. The allowable height is 35 feet. We're going 60 on this one, which is a 70% increase. So not only are the buildings moving closer to the road, they seem to be getting taller and closer to the road. The parking, of course, it's eliminating hundreds of parking spaces, which is kind of normal. We usually have a parking reduction in this sort of situation. But hundreds of spaces being removed, and still we're left with a sea of surface parking. Can't imagine if we didn't reduce the parking, where would they go if we can't do structured parking? The champion tree is a concern. I'm waiting to hear more information on that. Maybe there'll be some good news. Potential issues with the pond, I don't know much about that, but certainly sounds, reading some of the public speaks out comments and public hearing comments, seems to be a situation. And I guess just in general, do we need 275 more multifamily units in this area? So the houses are way down on the list. I'm not even going to talk about them.
That's how bad it is.
We'll just
All right.
keep going.
Yeah, okay, so I don't have a problem with the use of multifamily. I think that's fine. And I don't have any concerns necessarily about height. But I agree with all of you who have spoken, this is an underwhelming project. And it is somewhat ironic to me that the reduction in parking is so great. I think it was over 30% reduction, and yet it still looks like a sea of parking with total visibility from Walnut Street. So it just is not good. I don't think that our council is equipped to make a decision on any request for reductions in parking because we really don't understand this component yet. And I've said this in other council meetings. We really need to do that parking study, and I think staff has started it already, which is kind of, okay. It's really hard to do when you're in the middle of COVID, but we've got to use some actual science and research to be able to figure out what is the parking demand for multifamily in Cary, and what is it in southeastern Cary versus in western Cary? What is it in downtown? It may differ across the town, but we're not equipped to make a decision on parking reductions at this time because we just really don't know. If we say yes, it's based on a gut feeling. My gut feeling on this one is that it is underwhelming. It does not give enough to be compelling enough to justify any variances, any reductions on the streetscape. When we get requests for streetscape reductions, it's because they've gone above and beyond. They've put parking underneath their buildings. They've buried the stormwater device. They've saved that champion tree. They've done everything they can to make it a great project. And if not for this the buffer reduction, they wouldn't be able to accomplish all the other things. We're not getting that here. So I think this applicant has a long way to go in making this something that is going to enhance this part of our town.
Mr. Smith, it's your district.
Well, I think it's important to start with something positive. Having said that, no, trying to be pragmatic, I think the biggest point to start with is, why aren't these buildings on Walnut? And frankly, I wouldn't mind them higher, and I want them to be showcased. I want something that says, you're entering Cary, and this is quite a statement of that being there. I'm not going to repeat all the other things. I did meet with staff and the applicant, and I think it's important that the applicant know I did not talk to anyone at all. And I shared with them, I said, I can give you my opinion, which was maybe a little strongly stated than what you just heard from all of you. But I said to them, in fairness, you need to hear from my peers and get that reaction. But I made it clear that for all the points all of you have shared, those things were brought up to them by myself also. The other thing is we've been struggling with this on some other cases recently, and when you get to a rezoning, I think times have changed, and that bar and that standard has to be incredibly higher, And so when you come and you listen to the applicant tonight talk about, well, we've listened to you, we've listened to staff, we've come up with compromises. During a rezoning is not really the time I want to listen to compromises, especially when there are things like sea of parking, especially things like, reduced buffers and all of the above. And, the common theme I heard in both my meeting with them and the staff and what I heard in this presentation is this, the statement of we have to be financially feasible. I'm sorry, but as a council, what we have to look at is what is the best use for this, and if we're going to go against a rezoning, then if we're going to go with a rezoning, then that bar is going to be a lot higher. For me to listen to an applicant tell me that, well, we drained the swamp, we drained the pond, and that was a Freudian slip. Give me a break. But now we can't put this extra effort in for structured parking. Well, I'm sorry, go away. And, where's the masonry? Where's the structure that says, wow, this is the statement coming in? So it's just not there. And as you said, Mayor, we and all of you, we've been around a while. You never want to say never, you never want to say always, but what you want to do is try to keep an open mind. But I suspect that this is going to be one amazing hurdle, to overcome. And I sure hope that the applicant is listening tonight. And, kind of those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Bush?
I'm not going to repeat anything anyone else said, but I wholeheartedly agree with all of them. The comment that was made by the applicant that concerned me was that structured parking wasn't possible because of the instability of the soil of the pond. And so that concerned me, that if it's not possible for it to build structured parking, then I'm a little bit worried about the quality of an apartment building on the instability of land that used to have a pond. Now, I'm not a soils engineer, so I don't know, but it seems to me those are a bit incongruous, and I'd really be interested in how that is possible. You're telling me you can't build structured parking, but you can build a 2, 3, 4, 5-story apartment building, but you can't build structured parking because of the land that was in the pond. That didn't make sense to me. And then the other thing we can also, I think that they can take away from here after they, of course, hear from Councilmember Yalu as well, is I think the reduction of the streetscape. We've had a lot of conversations over the last rezonings, and if applicants are listening, they should hear it that, as Councilmember Robinson said, that's a last-ditch effort, right? That's when you did so much more for me. And me being the town of Cary. So those are my two comments.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Ms. Liu?
Yeah, I agree with everything what Mayor and other council members have said. I think there's a lot to overcome. I have no issues with the use for this site. And I just think there's nothing that's really exciting or looking forward to for this project. So I would encourage the applicant to work on the design and offer a better plan for this project.
Okay, thank you. This process will now go to our Planning and Zoning Board, and they'll review it and see how it matches the Cary Community Plan and make other comments, and it will return to us at a future date. So thanks to the applicant and to the citizens that are involved in this. And so we'll now move to our fourth public hearing, 20A02 SXCW Properties 2 LLC annexation, and Assistant Planning Director Deborah Grannon will introduce the item. And once again, we're not going to take action on this item tonight, and it will return to us at a future meeting. Ms. Grannon.
Mayor, good evening. Good evening, Council. This is a request for annexation of 2.62 acres of property located at 1629 Petty Farm Road. It's approximately 1,000 feet southeast of the intersection of NC 55 Highway and Mahal Avenue. It includes approximately 2.87 acres of intervening right-of-way. The property is contiguous to Cary's corporate limits. It's within Cary's ETJ. It's zoned Office Research and Development, and it's also within the Mixed-Use Overlay District and part of the Alston Activity Center Concept Plan that was approved in 2006 in an area that does allow commercial use. As we typically do when an annexation petition is presented, we report on any associated development proposals. In this case, the request is associated with a development plan that proposes a drive-through car wash with gas pumps. Because the plan proposes a drive-through, the Zoning Board of Adjustment will have final approval authority of the plan and will make its determination following a quasi-judicial public hearing. The Zoning Board of Adjustment hearing on the development plan will not be scheduled until the development plan is in the final stages of the review process. The development plan that's in review depicts the boundaries of the proposed commercial site extending into an area of the adjacent public right-of-way for Petty Farm Road. That's a complicating factor with this development because Council does not have the authority to annex that part of the request. That's because we don't have property in the right-of-way on the opposite side of the street. The proposed plan also includes a note indicating that the entire width of a portion of the existing Petty Farm Road right-of-way is to be abandoned, but getting at a point with one of the site driveway accesses and extending south to where it intersects with NC 55 right-of-way. Additionally, Cary's long-range transportation plan proposes the eastward extension of McCrimmon Parkway, beginning at the current intersection of Petty Farm Road and NC 55 rights-of-way. So some of the public right-of-way may not be appropriate for abandonment, as it may be needed for this extension of McCrimmon Parkway. So there are a number of issues that need to be resolved with this project before it can move forward and be finalized. And staff is finding the annexation of the property may be premature at this time. Due to the remote meetings law, this matter will be continued to a future council meeting for decision. But the applicant would like to hear from the council their thoughts about the appropriateness of the annexation of this time. This concludes staff's presentation. The property owner's representative, Mr. Gray Stiers, is here to speak about the request. And then following the public hearing, will be available for your questions.
Mr. Stiers, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I appreciate your consideration of this issue this evening. My name is Gray Stiers with the law firm of Fox Rothschild, 434 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh, and it's my privilege tonight to be representing and speaking on behalf of the applicant and landowner of this property, SXCW Properties 2. Now, we believe this is a fairly straightforward request for voluntary annexation of one of 4 parcels that create a donut hole of unannexed property entirely surrounded by property already in the town of Cary. As Ms. Grannon mentioned, it is immediately adjacent to the town's corporate limits. The property can easily be served with municipal water and sewer that runs along Highway 55. It is adjacent to other properties that receive city law enforcement and fire protection. And in fact, the closest fire station EMS is less than 1 mile away. Being in the ETJ, it is already subject to the town land use planning and code enforcement authority. It is next to a 4-lane Highway 55, so that transportation infrastructure is also already in place. Its current assessed tax value presumes a commercial use. It is zoned for office R&D, the ORD district, within a mixed-use overlay district, as Ms. Grannon explained. As a commercially zoned parcel, it will not increase the burden on school capacity. My client, the owner of the property, understands and is willing to pay Town of Cary municipal taxes upon annexation. In my experience, those are the criteria to be considered when evaluating a request for voluntary annexation. We recognize that, to be developed as a commercial use for which it is zoned and which is the basis of its tax assessment, the property needs municipal water and sewer service. I don't believe anyone would advocate for a well and sewer and septic tank to be a part of any land use on this parcel. But we understand from staff that some may have concerns about the potential use of the property. First, let me say regarding that, as a general matter, annexation decisions should be determinations based upon municipal services provided and municipal taxes to be paid, and not about land use regulation. The town has numerous tools in its toolkit to regulate land use. You have very strict standards in your ordinance and a very precise permitted and special use table. Pertaining to this property, you have a detailed small area Austin Activity Center concept plan. You have a mixed use overlay district that has specific requirements. In addition to your ORD district standards in general, you have a very rigorous development plan review process, and of course you have a very vigilant staff. Those are the tools that will ensure that whatever is developed here at whatever time by whatever developer in the future will be extremely high quality. Now, specifically regarding this parcel, it is true that currently there is a pending development plan at this time for a car wash being proposed. My client could have requested annexation before filing a development plan application. It could have withdrawn the pending development plan application before filing for annexation, and it could have withdrawn the development plan application before you vote on this annexation request and is willing to do so. But I advise my client against withdrawing the development application because, quite frankly, what would that accomplish and what would be the end of the purpose of that? The development plan and use, we believe, should be irrelevant to an annexation request to simply bring the parcel into the town's corporate limits. My client still may withdraw its application in the future. It may develop the property for another use, or it may sell the property for development to a buyer who would develop it in another way, whether a Starbucks coffee shop, a Goodberry's ice cream, or any of the other allowed uses under its current zoning. The point is that any of those uses will need municipal water and sewer, and regardless of how it is eventually developed, the parcel should be within the town of Cary corporate limits. The town has legislatively determined appropriate land uses for this parcel in zoning the property ORD within a mixed-use overlay district and adopting the use table and standards for that zoning district. And the application of those portions of your ordinance is a separate process from a simple request for voluntary annexation. In this specific instance, you may ask about the timing of the annexation request, since that's been mentioned in Ms. Grannon's presentation. Initially not anticipating an issue with the annexation, my client first, working with his engineer, filed for the development plan review and started that process. And it was actually the Cary's planning staff, in consultation with my client, that recommended that before we start working through the details that would be involved in the development review process, and we're familiar with those, it will be an extensive, lengthy process. It will involve a number of issues regarding compliance with the small area concept plan, with the realignment of Petty Farm Road, with that will need to be realigned if it is going to be consistent with the Cary's long-range transportation plan and the connection with the future extension of McCrimmon Parkway. We recognize all of those issues are going to take time by the staff, time by my client, time by its engineers, and recognizing that it was the town's staff that recommended that we should go forward and with the annexation request, because if the property wasn't annexed and we did not have available municipal water and sewer services, then all of that effort would be for naught. So, would be because the use will be to whatever it is and however it is configured and however it is developed and constructed, is going to be dependent upon municipal water and sewer services and being part of the town of Cary. And again, I don't think you want a development plan approved and built and it not being annexed. So for that reason, the town staff recommended that we move forward with the annexation. And so we put the development plan review on hold. I was then retained at that point, and we proceeded with the filing of the annexation application and petition. So, we are here to make sure that this is, in fact, part of the town of Cary. It's a donut hole now and meets all of the standards and principles for the city's management of its corporate limits and annexation. Namely, and finally, I'll emphasize the annexation of this property is an efficient use of taxpayer resources, given that the parcels around these donut holes are already receiving municipal services, and there would be little or no incremental cost of extending them to the donut hole properties like this one. And there will be an increase to the town's tax base by including this property within the corporate limits. For all of these reasons, we believe that the annexation is certainly appropriate. I'm not aware of any other voluntary annexation that's been denied, because here the client is stepping forward, the landowner is stepping forward and asking to be a part of the town and to pay municipal taxes. And we respectfully ask that you approve the zoning annexation petition for all of these reasons. Be glad to answer any questions that you have. And I also have Mr. Chris Morgan with the landowner, CSCW, here to answer any questions that may be directed to him that I cannot answer.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for your time and consideration of this request.
Thank you, Mr. Stiers. We now open the public hearing for 20A02 SXCW Properties 2 LLC annexation. And I'll call on Town Clerk to see if we have any callers on the line or if we had any comments.
No callers on the line and no submitted comments.
All right, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments. Seeing none. As stated earlier, this annexation will return to council at a future meeting for action. Thank you, Ms. Grannon. We now move to our fifth public hearing. This is third public hearing. I'm confused. Fifth public hearing, Cary-Raleigh agreement regarding future common municipal boundary. And once again, Assistant Planning Director Deborah Grannon will introduce the item, and council will not take any action on the annexation, and we'll see it at a future meeting. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a hearing for a proposed amendment between the town of Cary and the city of Raleigh regarding the common boundary between the municipalities. That boundary extends approximately 16.7 miles from the intersection of Tryon Road and Bailey's Run Court to the Wake-Durham County line near World Trade Boulevard. The previous agreement was approved in 1996 and it expired in 2016. Since that time, Cary and Raleigh staff have been working collaboratively to bring a new agreement forward for consideration by each council. North Carolina state law allows these agreements in order to facilitate orderly planning and decision-making regarding land development, as well as the provision of water and sewer services to the respective areas defined by the agreement. There have been some minor adjustments to the boundary, but only to address road alignment. For example, if property is subdivided and right-of-way is dedicated. But there have not been any major changes to the line since the 1996 agreement. The proposed agreement complies with state law by specifying the terms of the agreement, and in this case, it's 20 years, which is the maximum allowed by the statutes. It describes the boundary line with a written description as well as a map. It better defines the requirements for when Cary and Raleigh notify each other of annexation requests by property owners, and it outlines procedures to resolve disputes. State law requires each party in the agreement to conduct a public hearing before the agreement may be adopted. The Raleigh City Council conducted a hearing on September 1st, and there were no speakers at that hearing. Following the public hearing this evening, staff recommends that council defer action on the proposed amendment to a future meeting. This concludes staff's presentation, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grannon. I'll open the public hearing for a Cary-Raleigh agreement regarding future common municipal boundaries. And once again, call on the town clerk to see if we have any callers on the line or if there are any comments.
No call-in speakers and no submitted comments.
All right, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments.
I just have a question. What does it really do? I mean, is it really about rezonings? Because right now we cross those boundaries for like water, right? Because we provide water to the RDU airport. What does that boundary line actually do? Is it only about rezonings and land? I'm trying to understand where that fits.
Ms. Grannon?
This determines, certainly, this helps you understand which municipality would be the one eligible to zone the property or to annex the property. For example, if somebody's close to that boundary and they're trying to determine who do they go to apply for annexation and zoning, if they're in Wake County, then this boundary helps them determine which municipality has the authority to be able to annex.
Okay, so it's mostly related to land planning, not some of the other things like water, utilities, those sorts of things.
That comes after the annexation. Once somebody's annexed, that's when they would be able to connect to utilities. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Robinson?
Yeah, I just have a question because I know that there are some areas of Cary that still have a Raleigh zip code, and Lana High, our staff member who recently retired, used to take responsibility for working with the postmaster to kind of resolve those things. I've talked about this with Sean. I want to find out from maybe Deborah has insights into what would be the time frame that residents who live in this portion of land could expect if we were to start working on it. Could they expect to have a Cary zip code instead of having a Raleigh zip code?
And as you know, with your extensive work on this, especially with David Price and his help with helping resolve this, it is up to the post office because that does not always follow the municipal boundaries, the zip codes. So I don't have a timeline for you, but we could certainly continue to keep those communications open with the postmaster and see what we can do about making sure they realize how important it is to our residents.
Okay, that's great. So we've already done everything we can. It's now in the hands of the post office, and we can just keep our relationship going.
All the technical things have been done. It really just needs advocacy, not only from the council, but to make it a priority on their end.
Okay.
And the postmaster's just in Greensboro, so he's close.
So we're taking a field trip.
Yeah, well, I think he's a little tied up right now, but it doesn't matter. But we do need our congressional delegation to really make it a priority because it's that simple.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we've done what we can do.
Okay.
Stated our intentions and.
Just for clarification and those watching at home, anything about this boundary line changed from the last 20 years, or is it basically just a reaffirmation of what was there?
It is essentially the same boundary.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll see this at a future meeting. Thank you, Ms. Grannon. We'll move to our sixth public hearing, or public hearing number 6 is probably our fourth public hearing. Anyway, it's the 5.6 PRCR Master Plan Addendum and Amendment to Imagine Cary Community Plan. And Facilities Planning Manager Juliet Andes will introduce the item. Council will not take action tonight, and it will return to us at a future meeting. Ms. Andes.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. This staff report is presented to you for consideration in a public hearing on an addendum to the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan and to amend the Imagine Cary Community Plan to incorporate this addendum by reference. You may recall that this addendum originally came before you last year. Due to a missed advertising date at that time, a public hearing is being held this evening. The 2012 Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan did not include Parks and Greenways planning for the joint planning area, but rather listed it as a future implementation item. Development is already occurring within the study area as indicated by the blue outlined parcels representing development plan submittals. Thus, it is important that a master plan for this area be adopted so that greenways and open space conservation can be integrated with the community as it grows. Upon thorough analysis, recommendations for the study area include a comprehensive greenways network tying to the American Tobacco Trail and extending to the western edge towards Jordan Lake. Expanded conservation along key riparian corridors linking parks to Jordan Lake is also recommended. When the plan recommendations were presented last summer, a potential future park site within the study area was included. Since that time, Cary has acquired 219 acres of parkland within the study area, highlighted here, which eliminates the need for the original future park site. These plan recommendations were presented to Town Council and an initial public hearing was held on May 23, 2019. The Planning and Zoning Board also reviewed the plan addendum at its July 22, 2019 meeting and voted unanimously to forward the addendum to Town Council with a recommendation for approval. Staff recommends conducting a public hearing on this plan addendum and deferring final action on the addendum to a subsequent meeting. This concludes my presentation, and I am available to answer any questions at the conclusion of the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Andes. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing for PRCR Master Plan Amendment and Amendment to the Imagine Cary Community Plan and call on our town clerk to see if we have any call-in speakers or to summarize speakers who have sent in information earlier.
So no call-in speakers. We did receive 2 comments, and I'm going to call on Juliet to summarize those for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There were public comments received. Ms. Gladys Logan shared concerns about the proposed greenway network in light of the recent land acquisition within the study area. Staff have corresponded with Ms. Logan prior to the public hearing. Mayor, that concludes the submitted comments for this hearing.
Thank you. And that concludes the comments. So I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments. Seeing none, this will return to us at a future meeting. Thank you, Ms. Andes. We now move to discussion items. Our first discussion item is Penny Road Elementary School Park Refurbishment and Joint Use Agreement with Wake County Public School System. Project Manager Matt Wetherill will present the staff's report.
I'm here to discuss a project identified.
Thank you. Please proceed. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to discuss a project identified in the 2019 Shaping Cary's Tomorrow bond referendum, the Penny Road Elementary School Park refurbishment. Penny Road Elementary School Park is located at the corner of Ederly Drive and Penny Road. Wake County Public School System owns the parkland while Wake County currently operates and maintains the park. This 18.75 acre park houses a multi-purpose field, a lighted softball field with a surrounding walking trail, 2 playgrounds, 2 play courts, a bathroom and concession building, a picnic shelter, and 13 acres of open space with a natural surface walking trail and pond. The existing infrastructure at the park provides great bones for a Cary neighborhood park, and the location presents a great opportunity for Cary to close a gap of parks land and athletic fields in southern Cary between Ritter Park and Middle Creek School Park. By partnering with Wake County Public School System, Cary can refurbish the park, take over operations, and provide citizens with a park that meets Cary Park service levels. After voters approved the 2019 bond, staff began developing and negotiating terms for a joint use agreement with Wake County Public School System. The agreement attached to your staff report will give Cary the ability to refurbish the park and assume operation and programming of the licensed areas noted on the map during non-school hours. Under the agreement, Wake County Schools will retain maintenance of the school building, annex classrooms, and pathways between the school and parking lot, and the school and the annex classrooms. They will also be responsible for minor parking lot maintenance and parking lot markings. Cary will assume maintenance of the park grounds and buildings. The joint use agreement gives Cary 15 months to complete park refurbishments. Refurbishments will include turf renovations of the softball field and multi-purpose field, softball field lighting maintenance, installation of fencing and ball stop netting at the multi-purpose field, replacement of the fencing and dugout construction at the softball field, refurbishing the bathrooms and picnic shelter, pond dam maintenance and refurbishing the pond deck, improve landscaping, and improve and add walkways that meet ADA standards and add park signage. A connection between the park and the upcoming Ederly Road sidewalk project was proposed by Cary staff. Wake County Public School System requested that the connection not be included in the initial refurbishment of the park due to safety and security concerns during school hours. Cary and Wake County Public School System staff continue to discuss what options could be considered to enhance connectivity to surrounding neighborhoods while ensuring school security. $1 million of the voter-approved 2019 Shaping Cary's Tomorrow is appropriated for the park refurbishments. Recognizing Cary's refurbishment is an investment in both the community and the school, Wake County Public School System will contribute $50,000 to this project with the approval of this joint use agreement. Refurbishments will begin in fall 2020 after the execution of the joint use agreement, and refurbishments are anticipated to be completed summer 2021. As previously noted, refurbishment activities are projected to occur until summer 2021. Therefore, new operating costs and options for addressing them will be discussed as part of the FY 2022 budget development. Wake County Public School System and Cary will split the cost of replacement and resurfacing of the parking lot and major parking lot maintenance, with the school covering 60% of the costs and Cary covering 40% of the costs. This split is consistent or more favorable to Cary compared to the existing joint use agreements with Wake County Public School System. Upon approval and execution of the agreement, staff will hire contractors to begin the refurbishment work noted in the staff report. Staff recommends council approve the attached resolution authorizing the town manager or deputy town manager to execute the joint use agreement with Wake County Public School System. Staff further requests that council recognize and appropriate the Wake County Public School System's $50,000 contribution. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer questions.
Before I open it up to my colleagues, I have a question. Scenario, let's say evening planning, which is outside school hours. Let's say there's some school family event and then the town has softball games planned. Who wins the conflict? Or is that coordinated and whose staff is coordinating that? Or have you got that far?
Yeah, that's coordinated. Yeah, the school does get priority, and these are, we meet 3 times a year with them to coordinate any activities that the school may have that be outside normal school hours.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments?
Can you go through the sidewalk connection issue that you brought up? Why isn't it being connected? It doesn't make sense.
Yes, it's something we propose to Wake County Public Schools. recognizing that this is a neighborhood park and we'd like to improve the connectivity. They have issues with the security and safety, being able to monitor that connection to Ederly Park or Ederly Road coming into the park. Speaking with the Wake County Public Schools, they're not against a connection to the Ederly Park sidewalk. They're just not in favor of something that's outside of the area that they can't monitor when kids are coming and going from schools. So this is something that they're continuing to be open to. It's just we're trying to figure out exactly where we can do this.
Yeah, I'd be interested in a little bit more information offline because it seems odd that we wouldn't have a sidewalk connection to a park. I don't understand why that is.
I don't think there's so much.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You go.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We have many examples of elementary schools that have sidewalks that access park. I mean,
Green Hope
Elementary.
Yeah.
Would be a classic one. So we have many examples of this. I think this is something that our staff
Can work out.
should work on. And, maybe our approval is predicated on that sidewalk.
Yeah.
We'll fix it.
Mr. France?
She said it.
Oh, wow, you're thinking alike. Insane.
Yeah, I think this is a real enhancement for the folks who live out that Regency Way. There is a lot of, I think, expectation about that connection with the sidewalk, but I'm willing to keep an open mind that the efforts will be there. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that we have examples of other places that we might be able to share with them. This all started a while back when we were dealing with, how students were being walked to or getting over, to that school. So this is, it's really feels good to the heart to see that we've made this progress this far and we're almost there. And I just asked an appeal that we try to balance that safety concern that Wake has, but kind of the part that makes it all work is the access from the sidewalk. So I wish you well on that, and we have good news on that down the road.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that park get refurbished. My 31-year-old daughter played there when she was 4. Wow. It's been there quite a while. If we have no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
Well, I have a question for you. I mean, if this is important to us that we have a sidewalk, should we be approving these funds
I agree.
We can table it.
predicated on having a
Sidewalk connection. Was there a requirement for a bit of action on this time, or can we wait and bring it back forward after Mr. Weatherwell
can you help us with this?
Yeah, the $50,000 for the contribution is going towards the pathways within the school, within the park area that currently aren't up to ADA standards. It's something the school would have had to address whether we took the park over or not. So recognizing it's something that they have to handle. That's why they're contributing it towards us so it can be lumped into our walkway improvements.
But can we say, yes, we're going to appropriate these funds predicated on the inclusion of a sidewalk to Ederly?
It's a question I can get back to you on. Right now, it's not within the joint, within the agreement.
We'll get there.
That it's an option.
Okay.
So what action should we take then tonight?
I would recommend that we take action on approving the agreement, but with the stipulation that the sidewalk connection is incredibly important to us and that we hope that both sides can work that out.
Could you make that in form of a motion?
So
What
moved.
you said. So, second.
Well, there's a
Motion and a second. Further discussion or clarification?
What you said.
May I suggest that you adopt the resolution with that language added to the resolution?
Okay,
Approval's predicated on it.
okay.
I didn't see.
Where's the
You're good with that?
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Is
Still good with
that good, or you need it?
And then we should have a further extension of that. The money, as I understand it, and Mr. Weatherall can confirm this, but I believe it's Wake County's paying the money. We're simply appropriating it. So, accepting that money and appropriating it.
We're accepting $50,000, but we're appropriating
$1 million.
$1 million.
That's correct.
So do we need to clarify the motion further, or are we good with the motion?
I'll ask Mr. Stiegel.
Yeah.
I believe staff can work
Oh, for sure.
with this
Yeah, I
information.
make the
and-
approval predicated upon
Yeah.
that. This actually would be helpful to have you do that.
Okay, very good. We're ready for a roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Liu,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Flores, Councilmember Urha.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote affirmative as well. It's unanimous. Thank you so much. We now move to our second discussion item, debt refinancing and new installment purchase debt. Chief Financial Officer Karen Mills will present the staff's report. There are 2 sections to this presentation with a pause between topics for related motions, and there are a ton of motions at your desk. There are motion documents, as I said, at your seats with required wordage that must be read as is. All right, Ms. Mills, turn it over to you.
Good evening, Council. We're here tonight to propose 2 bond sales to refinance 3 types of our existing debt and lower our debt service expenditures. I'll share the debt plan and the justification with you, talk about some of the related issues that are spelled out in the staff report and the attachments, including an update on the bond rating process. At the end of this section of the presentation, we'll walk through the 6 recommended motions, council actions that are needed. After we talk about lessening our existing debt service obligations, we'll talk about increasing our debt service to finance a new fire truck as planned in the capital budget. We'll recommend 1 council action to wrap up this topic. These charts show you the current interest rate market that created this refinancing opportunity. The chart on the left shows an index of municipal interest rates over the last 20 years, and the chart on the right zooms in on the last 9 months. You can see that this is a great time to lock in lower rates to save interest expense. The proposed refinancing replaces a portion of our tax-exempt general obligation bonds and our revenue bonds with taxable bonds. Tax laws changed that limited our ability to refinance most of our tax-exempt debt. However, we can refinance with taxable bonds. The interest rates are so low now that we can sell Cary's first taxable bonds with our great credit ratings and still come out ahead. A portion of our existing debt is in 4 state of North Carolina revolving fund loans that helped fund the Western Wake Regional Water Reclamation Facility. These loans can be refinanced with tax-exempt revenue bonds. A general obligation bond sale to refinance the bonds highlighted in the green circle would be a competitive sale managed by the Local Government Commission State Treasurer's Office staff on October 20th. The second sale of all revenue bonds, highlighted by the blue circle on the slide, would refinance both the revolving loans and the existing revenue bonds. A negotiated sale, again overseen by the LGC staff, and that sale would be on October 22nd. We're asking Council tonight to authorize a not to exceed sale amount totaling $205 million to give us the maximum flexibility to do what makes financial sense the day of the sale based on the current interest rates that day. If interest rates actually move against us, we could do less or hopefully not be required to choose to do none at all. So for the best part of my presentation, I'm going to show you what might be possible and why we're working so hard and fast to get this moving. We're looking at potential savings of almost $15 million in debt service over the next 23 years. Most of the savings, $14 million, would benefit the utility fund based on the projects financed by the original debt. And that could help us minimize future rate increases for water sewer service for our citizens and our businesses. Another way to look at the stream of savings is to consider what those future dollars are worth today, and that number is still sizable, $12.6 million. The lower payments that we lock in with a successful sale will generate different savings each year, but the average is about $500,000 per year over the 23 years. We could see as much as $900,000 in savings in FY 2022. Of the savings, a small portion should be shared with the town of Apex. 2 of the small state revolving fund loans that I mentioned earlier that we plan to refinance were for shared cost for design of the Western Wake Regional Water Reclamation Facilities. If the refinancing is successful, in good faith, Cary should share the debt service savings with Apex, and that could be about $15,000 in savings for Apex in FY 2022. One of the council actions that we'll recommend in a few minutes directs staff to initiate an interlocal agreement to recognize that Cary refinanced that state revolving fund loan and to outline the new payment sharing arrangement. I do want to point out that these savings take into account the cost for the bond sales and include the financing cost in the new debt. We do need council to authorize up to $1.5 billion in bond sale issuance costs and appropriate the same amount of the new debt proceeds to cover the cost. As part of the bond sales, we get updated credit ratings. We've had very positive conference calls with the bond rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch in the last 2 days to go over the current state of financial affairs, our management culture, economic development, the regional economy, and the impact of the pandemic. As an example, because we're selling both general obligation bonds and revenue bonds, we'll get a report on both types of bonds from all 3 agencies. This is another first for Cary to get 6 rating reports at the same time. We're expecting those reports on or before October 6th. I'm confident that all of our AAA ratings will be confirmed, and I want to stop and take a moment to thank you for the responsible leadership that keeps Cary in a great financial position to earn this recognition. The excellent work represented by our colleagues and your decisions give us a great story to tell, and quite frankly, those were fun meetings to lead. With regard to the technical issues, there are a large number of legal documents connected with these transactions. Attachments to your staff reports A through H cover the taxable general obligation bond sale, and attachments I through N cover both the tax-exempt and the taxable series of revenue bonds. And I'll pause for questions just a minute. If you have any questions about this refinancing proposal before you consider action to move forward on this transaction.
So we're ready for,
Questions?
I'm sorry?
All right. Well, let's get started on 5 separate legal votes and then a final administrative vote for a total of 6. For the first 5 very formal motions, for the record, council member who makes the motion needs to read the legal title of the document as part of the motion, and you have that specific language at your seat. For this time, I would ask you to consider motions to refinance the existing general obligation bonds. First.
I'll open up the floor.
At this time, I'll introduce the resolution making certain findings and determinations and authorizing and ratifying the filing of an application with the local government commission in connection with the proposed issuance of general obligation refunding bonds by the town of Cary, North Carolina, and make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call vote. Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Yerha.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush is aye. I vote affirmative as well. Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Robinson.
At this time,
Ms.
I'll
Bush.
introduce the order authorizing $52,500,000 in general obligation refunding bonds and make a motion to approve.
There's a motion.
Second. Oh.
And a second. Discussion. Roll call vote. Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France. Councilmember Yerha.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote affirmative. Motion passes unanimously.
At this time, I'll introduce the resolution providing for the sale and issuance of not to exceed $52,500,000 general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2020A, and make a motion to approve.
There's a motion
Second.
and a second. Discussion. Roll call vote. Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem
Aye.
France. Councilmember Yerha.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Affirmative.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I'm affirmative as well. Motion passes unanimously.
At this time, I'll introduce the resolution making certain findings and determinations authorizing the filing of an application with the Local Government Commission, requesting the Local Government Commission to sell bonds at a private sale and approving the financing team in connection with the issuance of revenue refunding bonds by the town of Cary, North Carolina, and make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call vote. Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Yerhai.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote affirmative. Motion passes unanimously.
At this time, I'll introduce the order authorizing the sale and issuance by the town of Cary, North Carolina, of not to exceed $27,500,000 combined enterprise system revenue refunding bonds, Series 2020B, and $125 million taxable combined enterprise system revenue refunding bonds, Series 2020C, and authorizing the execution and delivery of certain documents in connection therewith, and make a motion to approve.
There's a motion
Second.
and a second. Discussion. Roll call vote. Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Yerhai.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote affirmative, and the motion is unanimous. We have one more, right?
I'll do it, yep. I make a motion to authorize staff to initiate any necessary amendment to the interlocal agreement with the town of Apex regarding shared costs of the state revolving loans, and approve an amendment to the fiscal year 2021 utility fund budget to recognize $1.5 million in bond proceeds and appropriate $1.5 million for refinancing issuance costs.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call vote. Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France. Councilmember Yerhai.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I'm affirmative as well. Motion's unanimously, and I think we turn it over to Karen Mills once again
Yep.
before we do our last one.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention to all those details. The state laws and the tax laws surrounding our debt are very important details, and these records will last 23 years into our future. So well, let's talk about the new debt for a fire truck. This is a much more simple transaction, but the details are just as important. We'll only need one formal council action for this item. After that, I'll summarize our next steps. Ladder 8, Cary's third tiller truck, was part of the 2020 capital budget. This truck just rolled into Cary last week. Our budget calls for an installment purchase contract to spread the cost of the truck into the future so that citizens who benefit from Cary's excellent fire service will pay a share of that cost. The installment purchase contract is for $900,000 of asset-backed debt. The truck is collateral for the loan. We issued an RFP for the loan, and 9 bidders submitted rates ranging from 1.4% to 2.65%. 2 bidders quoted 1.4% for 10-year loans, JP Morgan and Key Government Finance. However, the contract provisions from Key Government Finance were more favorable for Cary, with the flexibility to refinance on the wild chance that rates go even lower within the next 10 years. Payments will begin at $101,000 in FY 2022, with level principal repayment, which will result in lower payments over the life of the loan. Attachments O through R in the staff report are related to these transactions. So at this time, before we move to recommended action, happy to take any questions about the $900,000 installment purchase contract for a new tiller truck.
Questions for Ms. Mills?
All right.
Nope, no questions. We ready for a motion?
All right, so please.
Okay.
At this time, I introduce the resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of an installment financing agreement, a security agreement, and related documents in connection with the financing of a new fire truck for the town of Cary, North Carolina, and make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call vote with Ms. Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Yerhai.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I'm affirmative as well. Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Mills, anything else?
Just a few next steps. As I mentioned, you'll see the bond rating reports in early October. We'll see the mayor to get his signature for the fire loan closing on October the 8th. The bond sales are scheduled for October 20th and 22nd. We'll report the outcome to you in the weekly report. We'll see the mayor again for a large number of signatures for the bond sales in early November. And then after all the dust settles, we'll ask you for one final action on the consent agenda to approve an interlocal amendment with the town of Apex. I'm most looking forward to sharing the good news about the confirmation of our top-notch credit ratings and a successful sale that locks in savings that will benefit our citizens and businesses for years to come. Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you, Ms. Mills, and especially thanks from our citizens for saving us another $15 million, $18 million.
15? It's just-
Millions and millions. Appreciate it so much for you and your staff for doing so much for all of us. Okay, we're going to move to our third discussion item. 19 REZ 16 Silverton PDD Amendment Parcel G O&I portion. This case was tabled at our September meeting. Before we can do anything, we're going to have to remove it from the table. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. Roll call vote. Ms. Lou?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France?
Aye.
Councilmember Yara?
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith? Aye. Councilmember Bush?
Aye.
I'm affirmative as well, and it has been removed from the table, and we'll recognize Assistant Planning Director Deborah Grannon, who will give the staff report and summarize new information received since the last council member, and council may take action tonight. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, this case was presented to you earlier this month, and there were several outstanding concerns, and the applicant has responded to that. They did ask that it be tabled. I'm going to just give you a very brief overview of the request and then summarize the changes since you last saw this. The property is located at 1700 Evans Road on 2.24 acres. The preliminary development plan and associated PDD document proposes a maximum of 60 multifamily units, a maximum height of 55 feet, a minimum of 50% masonry on all building facades, a minimum of 1,200 square feet of community gathering space, one level of structured parking below the residential units, a 20-foot wide Type A buffer along the northwest and northeast property lines, a minimum planting height of 10 feet for understory trees in the streetscape, and a public art feature at the corner of Evans Road and Northwest Cary Parkway. The applicant also proposes several modifications. These include a parking rate of 1.77 spaces per unit, a streetscape width of 30 feet along Northwest Cary Parkway, and a 20-foot streetscape width along Evans Road. The original Silverton PDD called for a 30-foot wide streetscape along both of these frontages. And as we've noted previously, that's when the property was designated for office and institutional uses. The PDD also allows for streetscape averaging, and there is a utility easement along the Northwest Cary Parkway frontage that could reduce the streetscape to as little as 15 feet in the area colored in yellow on this image. And there's a required street side trail that's also allowed within the streetscape. So staff had expressed some concerns and observations early in the process about the streetscape reduction, and then the applicant returned with the condition about the masonry material on all building facades, as well as the increase in the planting height for the understory trees. Bear with me 1 second. I just want to make sure the right slide is up here. At their meeting in July, the Planning and Zoning Board recommended this proposal as being consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. And Board Chair Ryan Eads read a statement at the last meeting noting that the modifications were balanced by the Type A perimeter buffer and the art feature, but that there were some concerns that the board members had with the streetscape reduction. Staff reviewed the proposal and found that the request was consistent with the Live, Work, and Shape chapters by providing a variety of housing choices in the mixed-use center, and also noted that there were some concerns about the policies not supporting the work chapter by providing locational appeal for new and expanding firms. So from a use perspective, multifamily residential is a logical transition from a major intersection to other similar multifamily uses in the area. We were concerned about the reduced streetscape, but staff observed that the provision of public art did help to balance the concerns about appearance. So staff's finding is that the request was on balance consistent with the Imagine Cary community plan. Since you last heard this proposal, the applicant has returned with modifications to the zoning conditions and what was previously presented with a choice and a list of different zoning conditions. For example, the efficiency measures. They have now offered to include all of those efficiency measures instead of just selecting 2 from a pick list. So they would provide at least 2 vehicular charging stations, on-site composting, recycling, and LED light fixtures. They've also offered a condition that prior to requesting a certificate of occupancy, the developer shall install all wiring and conduit necessary to accommodate a future solar panel connection to the building. And then since your September 10th meeting, the applicant has offered to provide those energy efficient measures and to conduct a feasibility study regarding the installation of solar facilities. If such equipment does not exceed $10,000, then the applicant would install this prior to a certificate of occupancy. And as I mentioned, staff's recommendation was that this is consistent with the Imagine Cary community plan. So this concludes staff's presentation. The applicant spoke during the Public Speaks Out portion of the council meeting, and they're still on the line in the event you have any questions for the applicant. I'm also available for your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. And could you put slide 78 back up, since that has the conditions changed since our last meeting? I'll start off with my question about the last one. I don't know a lot about solar costs. So if there's a study done, and if the study says you can put up 1 solar panel, but they want to put up 3, so they're not going to do anything, that kind of thing is where I'm at. Can anyone help me with that? What are they measuring the study against? Because it would be easy to study against something large and make it above $10,000 and say, hey, can't do it. So that's what I'm looking for.
We're actually going to work on it with them.
Okay, very
So,
good. That helps.
Yeah, because we have a lot to learn about this area as well, and so we see it as an opportunity to really kind of grow in this area. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Other questions or comments from councils?
No, I could say that, I had expressed my concerns at the last meeting. And, I appreciate the discussions I've had since then with both staff and the applicant. I think the reality is it's almost like changing the fan belt while the car's running. We're learning a lot about,
You'd learn to never do it again.
Oh, I love you.
Hilarious. That's hilarious.
I thought that was pretty. Now, look, I think what's happening in parallel with this coming in is it's kind of the start of a lot of new things. And we as a town are also powering up and learning, what we can require, what's reasonable, and then how do you do the code enforcement, all of the things that are going on. So when the applicant agreed that there's just too many unknown to commit to that entire roof at this point, hiring a consultant that will assist us as a town in looking at some of those future code guidelines that we're anxious to put into motion, I think that's a real significant statement that says, look, I as the applicant and genuine in my desire to be a responsible developer in the environmental field. And 2, we recognize that we've got to do a significant leap in getting ready so that we can properly introduce those codes and then properly enforce them. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that addressed, you know, my concern at this moment in time. Would I have liked to see something different? Of course, but considering all the other initiatives made, all the other things around the environment and the things that they've stepped up to do, I've reached a point where I'm more comfortable than I was 2 weeks ago at the previous meeting.
Other comments?
Oops, I have to take everything off now. My comments are just to go back to 2 weeks ago. I'm still concerned about the use. I'm still concerned about having multifamily on 3 corners. And not just multifamily on 3 corners, but very close to the corners, right? We haven't done, even though I did ask for some detail from staff about where else we have corners that have multifamily on 3 corners. Almost all of those that I went and drove around, I think there were 6 or 7 of them, you couldn't see the multifamily from the corner. It was either hidden by something else, or maybe it was, there was a huge streetscape, so you didn't even know it was multifamily. So I do have concerns for this precedent. Of course, this is a very small one, and I'm excited about all the compromises that this developer has made. I think that's fantastic. It goes to what Councilmember Robinson said is, you know, show us that you have skin in the game to ask for these types of modifications. For me, it was more about setting some sort of precedent that we have that much multifamily that close to the street and at the intersection. Is it going to make this corner horrible? Absolutely not. It's just, it didn't pass that threshold for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the applicant has done an outstanding job of making a case for a compelling reason for rezoning, but I just can't get over the use on 3 corners. But I do applaud the applicant for making an excellent proposal. Unlike some I saw earlier, this one does all the things we talked about earlier. So, other comments?
Go ahead.
I certainly look favorably on all these new conditions, these green conditions, and I applaud the applicant and the staff for their hard work at the last minute to make all this happen. But having said that, I'm also a no vote on this, pretty much for the reasons I explained the last meeting, and that's just the use. I believe the existing zoning is more appropriate for this site than the proposed. It's that simple.
Other comments?
I'm just going to go back to the whole multifamily on 3 quadrants thing. One of these quadrants is going to be senior assisted living that will take care of our parents and grandparents. It's not an apartment complex. It's not your typical multifamily. So I appreciate the concern. I disagree with it. Dramatically different than another proposal we saw this evening. Dramatically. You know, you could almost say it's an environmental wish list of sorts. I mean, everything that they're proposing to get us to consider a reduction in a streetscape buffer. I believe they've gone above and beyond. And I just still believe that when all is said and done, with the way all 3 quadrants work out and the streetscape treatments and the public art and everything that they're doing, along with the traffic improvement, this is going to be a very special place. You know, when you drive by certain places in town, you get that feeling. It's like, ooh, this is a neat place. This is nice. And I know that's what's going to happen here. You know, nobody's going to like it when it's being built, but when it's all said and done, it's you know, we look for remarkable, and I have all the faith in the world that this will be it. So I supported it then, and I support it even more now.
Councilmember Liu, were you trying to speak? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I would like to applaud the applicant's efforts that you offer 4 conditions. The electrical car charging stations, on-site composting, the recycling stations for glass, paper, and plastic, and LED lamps in outside light fixtures. And you are offering all 4 options for this project. And there are just many elements about this project that I like. And this will be the first development that offers the wiring and conduit to accommodate future solar panel connections in building, and this will set the standard and precedent for future developments in our town. I'm really excited about this. I want to applaud Jack's efforts and leadership in pushing the developer to study solar panels, and we want this will help our town to understand how to install solar panels on multifamily and also on our government buildings. So I really appreciate the applicant offered this and provides great service to our town. I'm excited to be voting for this project.
Ms. Robinson, anything to add or a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
And I think I need to pull it from
Yep,
here.
we have motions at our table, I think.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, I move that we approve the statement of consistency as attached to this motion document for 19 REZ 16 Silverton PDD Amendment Parcel G, O&I portion, and rezoning 19 REZ 16 Silverton PDD Amendment Parcel G, O&I portion, with the offered conditions pertaining to energy efficient measures, solar conduit, and a study in front of us tonight.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion? Roll call vote. Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Yurha.
No.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
No.
I vote no as well. The vote passes 4-3. Thanks everyone for being involved in this, as was said, I forgot who, staff and the applicant for doing so much to make this a much better project than when we first saw it. So it's much better. Okay, we move to our, excuse me, second and last discussion item. Is 19 REZ, no, wait, that was not pulled. I am so sorry. I don't think we have anything else on our agenda this evening.
Correct.
All right, no closed session. Is there anything else from the council? If not, I declare this meeting over. Thanks. I was about to go over.
I declare this
again.
meeting over.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.
So